Ilara's outward appearance was a carefully constructed fortress. Behind the heavy glasses and the simple attire, her eyes held the depth of a stormy sea and a resolve born of fire. She was not a victim, but a survivor with a mission. Her past was a tragedy she carried in silence, a world of elegance and artifice she had to abandon to seek refuge. This marriage, a gilded cage to Adrian, was a sanctuary to her, a shield against a powerful and dangerous enemy who had stolen her family's legacy and threatened to destroy her. Ilara slowly turned to face him. The raw suspicion and anger in his eyes were a mirror of his coldness on their wedding day, a painful reminder of the man he truly was. She was tired of the game, tired of the pretense. This wasn't the enchanted moment from the dance floor. This was the moment of truth. The ceremony ended with a perfunctory kiss on her forehead, a gesture so devoid of warmth it felt more like a brand. As the guests filtered out, Adrian cornered her in a secluded study, his voice low and laced with venom. With a deliberate slowness that held a world of defiance, she reached up and unclasped the delicate mask she had been wearing, a small piece of lace that had concealed the final details of her face. The mask fell to the floor with a soft thud. Her emerald eyes, so full of fire and sorrow, met his. There was no need for words. The woman he had danced with, the woman he had humiliated just a week ago, were one and the same. "Don't get any ideas," he snarled, his words cutting through the air. "This marriage is a piece of paper. You will be a ghost in my house, a name on my legal documents, and nothing more. Do not speak to me. Do not approach me. And for God's sake, do not try to act like a wife." Adrian's breath hitched in his throat. His face, usually a fortress of calm, crumbled. Disbelief warred with a dawning, terrible realization. The sophisticated, witty, beautiful woman who had just captivated him was his wife. The ugly wife he had so cruelly dismissed. The woman he had forbidden from attending the gala. The shame was a physical blow, a wave of regret that crashed over him with the force of a tidal wave. He had been so wrong, and he had just humiliated her all over again. The silence in the hallway was heavier than any words. Adrian stood motionless, his mind a whirlwind of disbelief and shame. He stared at Ilara, a woman transformed not just by a dress and makeup, but by an unyielding spirit he had failed to see. The cold, unfeeling CEO was replaced by a man humbled and bewildered, his carefully constructed world of prejudice and arrogance shattering around him. Ilara met his gaze without flinching. Her silence was not a sign of fear, but of a strength he was incapable of seeing. She simply nodded, her expression unreadable. She had endured worse than his contempt. She had lost everything and was willing to do whatever it took to get it back. Adrian's arrogance was a small price to pay for the chance at justice she craved. She turned and walked away, a silent promise hanging in the air. He might see her as a ghost. But soon, the world would see her as a force to be reckoned with. The Thorn Corporation's annual charity gala was the most anticipated event of the social season, a glittering spectacle of wealth and power. It was a night where reputations were made and broken. For Adrian Thorn, it was a stage. For Ilara, it was a reminder of the chasm that separated her from his world. Ilara, the name once a source of bitter resentment, now felt foreign and tender on his tongue. "Why," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Why all of this, the disguise, the secrecy?" A week before the event, Adrian entered Ilara's study, a room he rarely visited, and found her sketching. His gaze was dismissive, barely lingering on the intricate designs on her page. "I need you to prepare the guest list for the gala," he commanded, his voice cold and flat. "And don't make any mistakes. My reputation depends on it." Ilara's eyes, still glistening with unshed tears, were like a mirror reflecting his past cruelty. She took a step back, wrapping her arms around herself as if to shield herself from his newfound gaze. The magic of the gala was a distant memory. This was the raw, painful confrontation she had known would come. Ilara, who had a photographic memory, had already memorized the list from a glance at his desk earlier that day. She simply nodded, her head bowed slightly. "I understand," she spoke, her voice low and steady, a testament to her profound inner strength. "Why? Because you wouldn't see me. Adrian, you refused to see me. You saw a contract, a dowdy wife, an embarrassment. You never once looked at the person behind the glasses. So, I had to show you." He hesitated for a moment, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Don't expect to attend," he said, the words hitting her like a physical blow. I'm taking Serena. She then began to unravel the truth, a tapestry of heartbreak and betrayal that had defined her life. She told him about her father, a brilliant designer whose legacy was stolen. She spoke of Marcus Holloway, the deceitful partner who had betrayed her family and now sought to destroy what was left of the Vance name. She explained that the marriage, a gilded cage to him, was a shield for her, a safe haven while she worked to expose Marcus's crimes. Alara's hand froze over her sketchpad. The charcoal smudged, ruining a delicate line. But as your wife, shouldn't I? She began, her voice barely a whisper. Adrian listened, his face a mix of dawning horror and growing admiration. He remembered the reports he had received from his own intelligence team about Marcus Holloway's shady dealings and corporate espionage. The pieces of the puzzle began to click into place, forming a picture of a woman who was not a weak, plain nobody, but a fierce, intelligent survivor on a quest for justice. Adrian scoffed. A cruel, mirthless sound. Look at you, Alara. You think you're fit to stand beside me to be seen by the world's most influential people. You're a liability, an embarrassment. Serena, on the other hand, is the epitome of grace and class. She knows how to navigate this world. You don't. He looked at the dress she was wearing, a masterpiece of design he had so easily dismissed, and realized it was more than just a beautiful gown. It was a silent cry for help, a declaration of a war she was fighting alone. A wave of profound shame washed over him. He had not just been a cruel husband. He had been a blind fool, a useless protector. He had a duty to her as her husband, and he had failed it spectacularly. The anger and suspicion he had felt earlier were gone, replaced by a fierce need to atone for his actions and a new, powerful resolve to protect her from the man who had wronged her family. The night of the gala had been a whirlwind of emotions, but the morning after was a stark, sobering reality. Adrian and Alara sat across from each other in his study, the tension between them a palpable force. The shame Adrian felt was immense, a heavy cloak he couldn't shed. The initial anger and suspicion were gone, replaced by a profound respect for the woman he had so foolishly underestimated. Stay at home, he concluded, his tone final. That's where you belong. Marcus Holloway, Adrian said, his voice grim. My intelligence team has been tracking his movements for months. He's a snake. He's been buying up shares of the Thorn Corporation through shell companies and is actively trying to poach our top talent. It's a hostile takeover in the making. Alara watched him leave, the door clicking shut behind him like the lock on her prison cell. Tears welled in her eyes, not from the cruelty, but from the searing injustice of his judgment. He had no idea who she was, what she had been through, or what she was capable of. The sting of his refusal was not just a personal slight, it was a public declaration of her worthlessness in his eyes. Alara's eyes widened in recognition. He's been doing the same to the remnants of the Vance brand, she said. He wants to own both of our legacies. He's not just a thief, he's a destroyer. Serena, hearing the news, appeared later that evening, her smile dripping with false sympathy. Oh, Alara, she cooed. I'm so sorry. Adrian can be such a brute. Can't he? But don't worry. I'll take good care of him at the party. You just stay here and be a good little wife. The revelation was a turning point. They were no longer two strangers locked in a bitter contract, but two allies with a common enemy. The icy chasm between them began to thaw, replaced by a fragile but growing trust. Adrian, the masterful strategist, laid out a plan. We need to expose him. We need to find the evidence that proves he orchestrated the Vance family's downfall and is now doing the same to Thorn Corporation. We can use my resources and your knowledge of his methods. Together, we can take him down. Serena's words, intended to be a final twist of the knife, had the opposite effect. They ignited a spark in Alara, a flicker of the fire she had long suppressed. She had been hiding, accepting the fate Adrian had cast upon her. But now, as the image of Serena on Adrian's arm burned in her mind, a new thought took root. She wasn't just a wife. She was Alara Vance, a woman with a purpose, a past, and a future to reclaim. And she would not be hidden away any longer. The magnificent Thorn Mansion was a palace of polished marble and cold steel. But for Alara, it was a gilded cage. After Adrian's and Serena's cruel dismissal, she retreated not to the loneliness of her bedroom, but to her sanctuary, a small, dusty, and forgotten wing of the house that she had secretly converted into an art studio. As she closed the door behind her, she shed her plain, severe persona like a discarded skin. The ill-fitting clothes and heavy glasses were cast aside, revealing a woman of striking, natural beauty. Her eyes a brilliant emerald green, her face a delicate masterpiece of sharp angles and soft curves. Ilara, who had felt so alone for so long, felt a surge of hope. She saw a glimmer of the man she had danced with the night before, a man of intelligence and surprising depth. She finally understood why her grandfather had chosen him. He wasn't just a powerful CEO, he was a potential partner, a protector, and a warrior in his own right. It was here, surrounded by canvases, swatches of fabric, and the scent of paint, that Ilara Vance truly existed. The woman Adrian dismissed as an embarrassment was, in fact, a visionary artist and a prodigious fashion designer. Her fingers, which Adrian assumed were clumsy, danced across a sketchbook, breathing life into a gown of silk and moonlight, a design of breathtaking elegance and fierce power. "I have files," she said, her voice stronger now. "My father kept meticulous records. I hid them before I came here." A memory, sharp as a shard of glass, pierced the calm of the room. It was of her father, the great designer Alistair Vance, his face etched with pride as he showed her the latest collection from their fashion empire. The Vance brand was a legend, a name synonymous with innovation and grace, but then came the betrayal, a cold, calculated strike from within their own ranks. A partner, a man named Marcus Holloway, had stolen their designs, sabotaged their finances, and ultimately driven her father to ruin. The family business was lost, and Marcus, a man of dangerous ambition, had made it clear that her life was also in jeopardy if she ever tried to reclaim her legacy. Adrian's face, which had been so cold and unyielding, softened slightly. "Then we worked together, Ilara, not as CEO and wife, but as partners. And this time, I won't fail you." Her grandfather, a close friend of Adrian's grandfather, had orchestrated this marriage as a last resort. A hidden clause in his will stated that Ilara, the last Vance heir, would be granted a significant portion of his wealth if she married Adrian and lived under his protection. It was a perfect plan. She would use the Thorn name as a shield while she quietly plotted her revenge. Adrian, a man who dealt in facts and figures, was a fortress she could hide behind. His arrogance a convenient blind spot to her true purpose. As they began to pore over the documents and reports, a new dynamic formed. They were no longer speaking in clipped, hostile sentences, but in the rapid-fire language of corporate strategy and shared purpose. He saw her mind at work, sharp, intuitive, and brilliant. She saw his resolve, his power, and a flicker of genuine care beneath his hardened exterior. The common enemy had, in a strange twist of fate, brought them closer than any contract ever could. The days that followed were a whirlwind of late nights and early mornings spent in Adrian's study. The vast room, once a symbol of his cold authority, was now their command center. Piles of documents, financial reports, and Ilara's father's meticulously kept journals were spread across the mahogany desk, a testament to their shared mission. She looked at her reflection in a small, cracked mirror on the wall. The woman looking back at her was not the meek, dowdy wife of Adrian Thorne. She was Ilara Vance, the last heiress of a fallen empire, and she was not here to be a ghost. She was here to reclaim everything that had been stolen from her. The gala, the very event Adrian had forbidden her from attending, would be the perfect stage for her rebirth. A plan, as intricate and beautiful as her own designs, began to take shape in her mind. The fire that had been rekindled within Ilara was a fragile, flickering thing. She held her plan close, but a deep-seated fear of Adrian's reaction and the weight of her grief threatened to extinguish it. She found herself wandering the quiet halls of the mansion, the grand and empty spaces mirroring her own isolation. It was in one of these moments of silent despair that she ran into Mrs. Gable. As they worked side by side, Adrian began to see the true Ilara. She wasn't just a survivor, she was brilliant. She could decipher intricate financial schemes with the same ease she sketched a new gown. Her insights were sharp, her memory photographic, and her determination was a force of nature. He watched her animatedly explain a crucial piece of evidence, her eyes sparkling with passion, and felt a profound sense of awe. This was the woman he had been so quick to dismiss, the woman he had so foolishly humiliated. Mrs. Gable, the head housekeeper, was a kind woman with a face creased by 1,000 smiles and a gentle, motherly warmth that felt like a lifeline in this cold house. She had always treated Alara with a quiet dignity, never judging her plain exterior, but instead seeing the weary sorrow in her eyes. She noticed Alara's somber expression and gently placed a hand on her arm. He found himself laughing at her witty, dry humor, the kind that had been on display for a moment at the gala. He found himself admiring the way she braided a loose strand of her hair, while deep in thought, the icy wall he had built around his heart began to crumble, brick by brick, replaced by a deep and genuine affection. It wasn't the shallow infatuation he had felt for Serena. This was something real, born from respect, shared purpose, and a glimpse into her beautiful, resilient soul. My dear, you look troubled," she said, her voice soft and caring. "You carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, and that's no place for a young lady to be." One evening, as Alara was about to leave the study, Adrian stopped her. "Alara," he said, his voice soft, hesitant. I was wrong about you. About everything. My behavior was inexcusable. I was a fool, blinded by my own pride. And I'm so deeply sorry for the way I treated you." Tears, which Alara had fiercely held back all day, finally spilled over. She confided in Mrs. Gable, not about her secret identity or her family's betrayal, but about Adrian's cruelty and the humiliation she felt. She spoke of his refusal to let her attend the gala, of his belief that she was an embarrassment. Alara looked at him, her heart a tangled mess of conflicting emotions. The man who stood before her was not the cold tyrant from their wedding day. This was a man seeking redemption, his eyes filled with a raw, honest regret. "Words are easy, Adrian," she said quietly. "Actions are harder." Mrs. Gable listened patiently, her face full of sympathy. When Alara was finished, she took her hands and looked her in the eye. "Mr. Thorne is a proud and foolish man. Child," she said, her tone firm but loving. "He has been given a treasure and has no idea what he holds. He doesn't see your heart, your strength, but you see it, and that is all that matters." "Then let my actions speak for me," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "I will not rest until Marcus Holloway is brought to justice, not just for my company, but for your family. I will protect you with everything I have, and I will spend every day earning the chance to be the husband you deserve, not the one you were forced to marry. But what can I do? I'm just me," Alara whispered, the ingrained fear of Marcus Holloway and the societal pressures weighing on her. Alara's walls, which had stood for so long, began to give way. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the genuine shift in his heart. It was a second chance, a fragile new beginning built not on a contract, but on the foundation of shared pain and a promise of a better future. She knew the road ahead was still long, but for the first time since her family's downfall, she didn't feel alone. The day of the board meeting arrived. A tense and somber affair at the Thorne Corporation's main office. Marcus Holloway, a man whose ambition was only matched by his greed, was there, his face a mask of false sincerity as he presented his proposal to the board. He spoke of new mergers, market expansion, and modernizing the corporation. Serena, his silent partner in crime, sat beside him, a triumphant glint in her eye. She believed their plan was foolproof, and that Adrian and Alara were completely defeated. "Just you, my dear, just you is a magnificent thing," Mrs. Gable insisted. "I saw you the first day you came here. I saw the fire in your soul, the artistry in your hands. Don't hide that. Go to that gala. Not for him, but for yourself. You are the rightful Mrs. Thorne. You are the heir to a great legacy. Go there and show them all the truth of who you are. Let the world see the real Alara Vance." Adrian, however, was a force of quiet calm. He sat next to Alara, who was no longer in her disguise but wore a simple yet elegant black pantsuit, her posture straight and her gaze unwavering. They were a unified front, an alliance forged in fire. Mrs. Gable and Chloe, their loyal supporters, were also present, their faces a mix of anxiety and fierce loyalty. Mrs. Gable's words were a balm to Alara's wounded spirit. They were the encouragement she desperately needed, a permission to stop hiding and start fighting back. She wiped her tears, a new resolve hardening her gaze. She would go to the gala. She would not be a wallflower or a meek ghost. She would be a phoenix, rising from the ashes of her past to reclaim her future. The decision was made. The resolve, fueled by Mrs. Gable's quiet encouragement, now burned bright within Alara. She was no longer a ghost in her own life, but an avenging spirit ready to reclaim her legacy. The first step was to shed the armor of meekness she had worn for so long. "Thank you, Mr. Holloway," Adrian said, his voice cutting through the smug atmosphere. "A very impressive presentation. However, I believe we have some information that might put your proposal, and indeed your entire career, into a new perspective." She sent a coded message to her closest confidant, Chloe, a renowned fashion stylist and her best friend since childhood. Within hours, Chloe arrived at the Thorne mansion, her vibrant energy a stark contrast to the house's somber atmosphere. She was shocked by the story of Adrian's cruelty, but immediately threw her full support behind Alara's plan. The air in the room grew thick with suspense. Adrian signaled to an assistant, who began to project a series of documents onto the large screen behind them. The first was a financial report showing a series of illegal shell companies, all linked to Marcus Holloway, that had been systematically siphoning funds from both Thorne and Vance corporations. Alara had painstakingly pieced together this evidence from her father's hidden journals. "He said you weren't fit for the party," Chloe scoffed, her eyes blazing with protective fire. "Darling, he has no idea what he's about to miss. Tonight, you're not just attending the gala. You're becoming the gala's main event." As the documents appeared, Marcus's smug smile began to fade, replaced by a cold, calculating fear. He tried to interrupt, to claim the documents were fabricated, but Adrian was relentless. He then presented another set of files, undeniable proof that Marcus had not only stolen the Vance family's designs, but had also tampered with their accounts, driving them to bankruptcy. The final blow came in the form of a recorded conversation between Marcus and Serena, detailing their plan to marry her to Adrian, control the Thorne empire, and seize the Vance legacy. The transformation began. Mrs. Gable, with her steady hands and gentle heart, helped Alara remove the severe bun, letting her luxurious chestnut hair cascade down her shoulders in soft, natural waves. Chloe, a master of her craft, then worked her magic, using subtle makeup to enhance Alara's emerald eyes and high cheekbones, making her skin glow with a dewy, ethereal quality. The thick-rimmed glasses were discarded, revealing a face of breathtaking beauty that had been hidden in plain sight. Serena's face went white. She stood up, screaming denials, her perfect facade crumbling into a desperate mess of rage and fear. But it was too late. The evidence was irrefutable. The board members, once swayed by Marcus's charismatic lies, now watched in silent shock and disgust. Adrian had not just presented evidence, he had exposed a conspiracy of greed and betrayal that went to the very heart of their business. The final piece of the transformation was the gown. Instead of choosing a new design, Alara went to her hidden closet and carefully unzipped a garment bag. Inside was a dress that held a painful but powerful memory, a silk gown of midnight blue, embroidered with constellations in delicate silver thread, from her family's final, unreleased collection. It was a masterpiece, a testament to her father's artistry and a symbol of her lost empire. In the end, justice was swift. Marcus was led away by security, his empire crumbling around him. Serena was publicly disgraced, her social standing in ruins. Adrian looked at Alara, a smile of profound pride and relief on his face. They had not just won a corporate battle, they had won their freedom. The aftermath of the boardroom showdown was a quiet, profound calm. The storm had passed, leaving in its wake a sense of liberation. Marcus Holloway and Serena were no longer threats, their power and social standing reduced to ashes. The Thorne Corporation was safe, and the Vance legacy, once thought lost, was now in Alara's capable hands. The contract that had bound her to Adrian was no longer a cage, it was an open door to a new life. "This is it," Alara said, her voice filled with a quiet strength Chloe had not heard in years. "This dress is more than just fabric. It's my history. It's my defiance. And tonight, it will be the beginning of the end for the man who took everything from my family." Later that evening, Adrian found Alara on the terrace of their home, looking out at the city lights. The cold mask of the CEO was gone, replaced by the earnest vulnerability of a man in love. He approached her slowly, his heart pounding with an unfamiliar mix of hope and fear. As she looked at her reflection, a woman she had almost forgotten looked back at her. This was not the timid Elara Vance who married Adrian Thorne. This was the heiress, the artist, the fighter. The phoenix was ready to rise. The Thorne Corporation Gala was in full swing. The ballroom of the Grand Regent Hotel shimmered with crystal, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and whispered alliances. Adrian, looking impossibly handsome in a bespoke tuxedo, stood by the entrance, a glass of champagne in hand, his gaze scanning the crowd with detached boredom. Serena, clinging possessively to his arm, was a vision in a fiery red gown, her smile a practiced facade of triumph. "Elara," he began, his voice soft. "The company is secure. Your family's legacy is safe. You are free now. The contract. It doesn't bind you anymore." Suddenly, a hush fell over the room. Adrian's head snapped up, and even the cynical chatter of the elite came to a standstill. The grand doors had just opened, revealing a woman who seemed to have stepped out of a dream. Elara turned to face him, her eyes shining in the moonlight. I know. She was breathtaking. Her midnight blue gown, shimmering with delicate silver embroidery, moved with a grace that was both regal and ethereal. It was a dress that did not just clothe a woman, it told a story. Her hair, a cascade of rich chestnut waves, framed a face of exquisite beauty. Her emerald eyes, no longer hidden behind glasses, held a depth and intelligence that captivated everyone who met her gaze. She walked with a quiet confidence, her posture perfect, her every movement radiating an aura of power and mystery. Adrian took a deep breath, the words he had rehearsed all afternoon now feeling inadequate. He didn't want to talk about business or contracts. He wanted to talk about a future he now couldn't imagine without her. He took her hands in his touch gentle and reverent. Adrian was frozen. Who was this woman? He was a man who prided himself on knowing every important figure in the city, but he had never seen her before. She was not a celebrity, not a socialite he had read about, yet she held the room in the palm of her hand. A pang of regret, sharp and unexpected, pierced his cold heart. He wished he had a woman like that on his arm, someone who could command such attention without saying a word. "I asked you to marry me because of a will," he said, his gaze unwavering. "I was blind to the incredible woman I was standing next to. I saw a contract where I should have seen a partner. I saw a stranger where I should have seen my future. But these past few weeks, working with you, fighting for you, I've fallen in love with you, Elara. Not the woman from the gala, but the woman behind the disguise, the artist, the fighter, the one who taught me what strength truly is." Beside him, Serena's perfect smile wavered and then vanished. Her eyes, filled with a mixture of confusion and intense jealousy, narrowed as she watched the woman approach. The gown, it was hauntingly familiar. She knew that intricate constellation design, a design she had once seen in a confidential file, a file from the Vance fashion house. The realization, cold as ice, hit her. This woman was wearing a Vance original. But who was she? He knelt down on one knee, not in a grand gesture for the cameras, but in a moment of honest, profound humility. "I don't want to be the husband you were forced to marry," he said, pulling out a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a simple yet stunning ring, a single emerald cut to perfection. "I want to be the man you choose. Will you do me the honor of marrying me again? This time for real." As Elara, now transformed, took a sip of champagne, she subtly scanned the room. She saw Adrian, his jaw slack with shock. She saw Serena, her face a mask of rage and suspicion. A small, triumphant smile touched her lips. She wasn't just here to be seen, she was here to be remembered. And Adrian Thorne, for the first time in his life, was about to be profoundly humbled. Adrian Thorne, the man who prided himself on his unwavering focus and control, found himself unable to tear his eyes away from the mysterious woman. He had never been so captivated. Her presence had an almost magnetic pull, a quiet strength that made Serena's boisterous charm seem shallow and desperate by comparison. Tears streamed down Elara's face, but they were tears of joy. She looked at the man who had once been her tormentor, now her protector, her partner, and her love. The journey had been difficult, fraught with injustice and pain, but it had led them to this moment. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the genuine love that had replaced his arrogance, and she knew her answer. "Serena, Sensing his attention was wandering, tightened her grip on his arm. Adrian, darling, who is she? I've never seen such a gaudy dress. Her whisper was meant to be conspiratorial, but it was edged with venom. Yes, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Yes, Adrian. The second wedding was a world away from the first. There was no cold, bitter resentment, no forced vows or resentful silence. Instead, it was a small, intimate ceremony held in the Thorne family garden, bathed in the soft glow of twilight. Alara wore a gown of her own design, a masterpiece of flowing silk and delicate lace that was both elegant and understated. Adrian, his eyes filled with love and pride, watched her walk toward him, seeing not a contract, but the woman who had captured his heart and transformed his world. Adrian ignored her. He handed his champagne glass to a passing waiter and, with a newfound purpose, began to navigate the crowded room. Excuse me, he said to the woman, his voice smooth and confident, a stark contrast to his earlier harsh words to Alara. I don't believe we've had the pleasure. My name is Adrian Thorne. The vows they exchanged this time were a promise of a true partnership, a commitment born of shared trials and triumphs. Adrian promised to love, honor, and protect her, not as his wife by obligation, but as the partner he now chose above all others. Alara, in turn, promised to stand by him, to be his equal in every sense, and to build a future that was truly theirs. Alara's heart pounded a fierce rhythm beneath the constellations of her gown. This was the moment she had both dreaded and anticipated. She met his gaze, a mischievous glint in her emerald eyes. I know who you are, Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice a soft, melodic sound he had never heard from her before. But I'm afraid my name will have to remain a secret for now. After the ceremony, they stood together on the terrace, hand in hand. The city lights glittered below, a vast and vibrant tapestry of the world they were now ready to conquer together. Alara's father's legacy was no longer a ghost of the past, but a living, breathing part of her new life. Adrian had not only helped her reclaim her family's name, but had also given her the resources to revive the Vance fashion house. He saw her not just as an artist, but as a brilliant businesswoman whose vision would one day rival his own. Adrian, a man used to getting his way, was intrigued rather than offended. A secret, a mystery. Then, I like a challenge. He offered her his hand with a charming smile that made many a socialite swoon. May I have this dance? Mystery woman. Their journey had been a complex tapestry of misunderstanding, prejudice, and betrayal. Adrian, the arrogant CEO, had been humbled by the very woman he had dismissed. He had learned that true strength was not found in power or wealth, but in kindness, resilience, and the courage to be oneself. Alara, the quiet artist in hiding, had found not just justice for her family, but a love she had never dared to dream of. Alara placed her hand in his, and a jolt, warm and unexpected, passed between them. As they moved to the slow, classical music, Adrian was utterly enchanted. He had danced with countless women, but none like her. She was a natural, following his lead with an effortless grace that spoke of years of disciplined training. He realized he was not just dancing with a beautiful woman. He was dancing with an equal. They were a testament to the power of a second chance, a reminder that the most beautiful love stories are often born from the most unexpected of places. They were not just a CEO and his wife, but two equals, two partners, ready to face the world as one. As they leaned in for a kiss, the city lights shimmering below, they knew this was not an ending, but a new beginning, a love story finally written on their own terms. You are surprisingly witty, he remarked, a genuine smile gracing his lips. And your eyes? They're incredibly familiar. Have we met before? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story about love, justice, and second chances, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay with us for the next one. And while you're here, check out our other videos. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. A silent alarm went off in Alara's mind. She had been careless. She quickly pulled back, her smile a little cooler now. Perhaps in another life, Mr. Thorne, but in this one, you're the last person I'd expect a compliment from. His smile faltered, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He tried to think of a time they could have met, but his memory came up blank. All he knew was that this woman was unlike anyone he had ever met. Her beauty was just the surface. Her true allure lay in her intelligence and an unshakable inner strength that drew him in. A strength he had so cruelly dismissed in the woman he was forced to marry. Adrian was still reeling from the strange, intoxicating dance with the mysterious woman when Serena, her face a mask of barely contained fury, stormed over to him. "What in the world were you doing?" she hissed, grabbing his arm. "Dancing with that woman, the one who's wearing that ridiculous dress." Adrian, still lost in the memory of Alara's wit and grace, was dismissive. "Ridiculous Serena. That dress is a work of art, and she's fascinating." His words were like a match to a powder keg. Serena's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Fascinating. I'll tell you what she is. She's a nobody. I've never seen her at any high society event. That dress, I know that style. It's too familiar." A memory, a discarded piece of corporate intel from her past efforts to spy on a rival fashion house, clicked into place. The unique constellation pattern, the intricate embroidery, it was a signature of the Vance family designs. The same family that had fallen into ruin. The same family that Alara belonged to. Serena's malicious smile returned, laced with triumphant malice. "Oh, Adrian," she purred, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "You really have no idea. Do you? You're so distracted by her cheap glamour that you've missed the obvious." She began to circulate among their social circle, her whispers carrying just enough volume to be overheard. "Can you believe it? Adrian is being fooled by some gold digger. She just came out of nowhere, wearing a knockoff dress. It's a disgrace to the Thorne name." She fabricated a story, suggesting the woman was a desperate actress or a low-level schemer trying to trap Adrian. The malicious rumors spread like wildfire. A few of Adrian's acquaintances approached him, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and thinly veiled condescension. "Adrian, old boy, who's the mystery woman? Heard she's a bit of a theatrical type," one said with a wink. His words were a carefully aimed dagger. He saw her plain exterior and assumed her mind was just as simple. He saw a dowdy woman, not the artist and heiress who had once commanded a room with a single glance. The raw pain on her face was a fleeting moment of satisfaction for him. Adrian's newfound admiration for the woman began to curdle into doubt. Was Serena right? Could this woman, with her mysterious allure and captivating eyes, be a fraud? He was a man of logic and reason, and Serena's story, as flimsy as it was, preyed on his insecurities and prejudices. He had been so sure she was an equal, a kindred spirit. But now, he felt a sting of humiliation. He, the great Adrian Thorne, had been swayed by a pretty face. The anger began to rise within him, pushing aside the genuine connection he had felt, leaving only a bitter sense of betrayal and a growing suspicion that he had been played. The whispers were getting louder, the condescending glances more frequent. Alara, with her heightened senses, felt the subtle shift in the room's energy. Adrian, a man who had been entranced just moments ago, now stood with a hardened jaw, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. The magic of the dance was gone, replaced by the chilling reality of his prejudice and Serena's malicious influence. It was time to leave. Her mission for the night had been accomplished, but the true battle was yet to come. The vows were a hollow echo in the cavernous Thorne family chapel. Adrian Thorne, a man whose empire was built on razor-sharp precision and ruthless ambition, stood before the altar, his face a mask of cold fury. This wasn't a marriage born of love or even respect, but a final, bitter instruction from his late grandfather's will, a contract that he was forced to sign to inherit the throne of the Thorne Corporation. Without a word to anyone, she turned and made her way towards the nearest exit, her gown swishing softly behind her. She walked with a dignity that belied the turmoil within. She felt Adrian's gaze on her back, a cold, questioning stare that was a far cry from the warmth she had felt moments before. Across from him, in a simple, ill-fitting white dress, stood Alara Vance. Her face was hidden behind large, thick-rimmed glasses, and her hair was pulled back into a severe bun. She was a ghost of a woman, a plain canvas in a world of vibrant color. To Adrian, she was a symbol of his humiliation, a living testament to his grandfather's final act of control. He couldn't believe this was the woman he was being shackled to, a stark contrast to the elegant and glamorous Serena. His former fiancée, who watched the ceremony from the front row with a smug, knowing smile. Adrian watched her go, a frantic voice in his head telling him to stop her. The rumors from Serena were a bitter pill, but the memory of her captivating smile and intelligent wit was a powerful counter-argument. He had to know. Was she a fraud? A schemer? Or had he, once again, made a grave mistake in judgment, abandoning all decorum? He strode after her, pushing past startled guests. He found her in a quiet, candlelit hallway, her back to him as she reached for the ornate door handle.